We're live. Hey everyone. Hello. Here we are. So you've got an idea or two or 10 for your musicals, but how do you begin? Where do you start? Big questions. When you've got the idea, especially when it's something that really lights you up, but that's all that you have, it can feel so daunting. Where do you even start when there's not even a blank page yet to be scared of, right? We just have this brilliant idea and we want it to be this big, beautiful thing at the end of the road, but there's a lot of steps to get there. So how do we get started with the idea? And if it's just you alone in particular, that makes it even harder. If you do have collaborators, that makes it a little bit easier, but still, we've got a lot of big questions we need to ask early on in this process. So before you have anything concrete down on paper, what is it that you need to know that will help you get started, and also act as your guide throughout the entire process, through the process of writing, as well as the process of revising, and then through development? What is going to be your guide along the way? Today, we're going to look at what I call the North Star questions or question sets that will help to kickstart your writing process and also act as that thing that can keep you on track as you're moving through your entire process of writing, revising, and onward. Hello, Piano Eagle. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. First of all, hi, I'm Michael Ratty. Hopefully you know me by now, musical theater writer guy. I am calling in from Queens, where yesterday the sky looked like the apocalypse. So where are you all calling in from? How bad was the smoke for you? Hopefully not too bad. Hoping that this will clear out and we can get some normal daylight soon. I think our warning goes through the end of the day. But it was scary. That was some scary stuff. If you're joining me live today, please feel free to ask questions as we go along. It's going to be potentially an overwhelming little moment here, because these questions, although they're only 6 question sets, can feel pretty big, but they're going to be crucial. If you're joining on the replay, feel free to also comment and ask some questions. I always pop in and try to answer everything after the fact as well. We will do today like we normally do. We'll do some content. I'll chat about something that's coming up, and then we'll do some more content, and we'll be good. At the end, if there's time and people would like to ask some questions, we'll do an Ask Me Anything sort of round. If not, we'll peace out. Great. You may be wondering, why today? Why a Thursday? Such a good question. Thank you for asking. I'm about to go upstate New York, and do a show, and I leave tomorrow. So I couldn't do my normal Friday for a live stream. So that's why we're doing it today. And on that point, I actually will not be doing a live stream in 2 weeks because I'll be in tech for the show. So I will see y'all in video form next week and the week after, and then be back on live stream in 4 weeks, just so we're all aware. All right, so why this topic? All right, honestly, this is probably, I think it is. I think this is the most common conversation I have with people when I'm coaching them or helping them work through problems, or working in our accountability group when it comes to people's individual musicals. Because whenever I am trying to help someone overcome an obstacle or give feedback on something, we always end up back at these questions, whether it's one of them or all of them. So these are that important to answer because they really will keep you on track, but also provide you with everything you need to answer about your own writing process. I know that sounds like super simplistic, but it's true. Like if you can put the answers to all of this, like on a big old Post-it right next to where you write, that will help you keep you on track better than anything else, except for maybe a coach. But that's just conversation, right? Conversation is useful even with those answers. So not to mention that I also often see some produced works that have a lack of cohesion, of clarity. And usually it's because as I'm sitting in the audience, I wouldn't be able to answer all these questions for the writing team. Usually, if we're in the audience, we can kind of glean what the answers to most of these might be from a show. And if, as you're doing so, you either can't answer all these questions or the answers seem like they don't fit together, that's a problem. So that's why there would be a lack of clarity and a lack of cohesion to a musical, which of course we want to avoid with your material to the best of our abilities. Great. This is important stuff. Let's dive in. All right, my first question is just one question. And that is, what is this story about? Now, what I usually add to that is, what is this story about originally? Because, I mean, obviously not everything in musical theater is an adaptation, but most things are an adaptation, whether that's of a real life story or a book or a TV show or a play or a movie, right? We're adapting from some sort of story that pre-exists. But even if it's not an adaptation, you had the idea. And the idea came into your brain in a certain way and was probably a relatively succinct idea. And my question would be, what was that original idea about? So, for instance, the original idea I had for The King's Legacy was that Anne Boleyn needed a musical story version in which she was being treated as though she was an actual human being with 3 dimensions, with great ambition, who did some good stuff and did some bad stuff, but changed the world. Like, that was the idea. And that's kind of a rambly sentence. I'm sure I had something more succinct when I first thought of the idea, but that was the idea. So that's what the story was originally about for me. But I will also say that what prompted me to be thinking about the idea of writing The King's Legacy, of writing a show about Anne Boleyn, was reading and watching other stories about Anne Boleyn and looking at them and being like, that's exactly what I don't want. I don't want to reduce Anne to the virgin whore dichotomy. I don't want to reduce Anne to a 2-dimensional human. I don't want Anne to be a pure villain. I don't want Anne to come off as though she messed up the world, because there's so much more to her story than what was being given. So for me, the original idea came into my head as was, and that was something that was important for me to remember. I also did not keep that in mind very well early on in the process, and things kind of fell to the wayside, and I fell into some traps of the other ways her story has been told a bit. So if only I had been more informed back then, had known these question sets and written it all out, I might have been able to avoid some missteps early on in my writing process for that show. So for you, what is your story about originally? If it is an adaptation, how would you narrow down into one sentence, if you can, what that thing is about? Done. Question 2. This is more of a question set. It's multi-part. You gotta ask yourself, why this story? Okay, why are we telling this story in this way, aka a musical? And also, if you have frames on it as well, like what are the frames of that musical? What are the stakes of that musical? And why now? Okay, so again, why this story being told in this way now? Very important. So to clarify this why question is aimed at why the world needs it, or why a specific audience set needs this story, right? So why this story? Well, for The King's Legacy, it again was about, well, Anne Boleyn has not been given her story in a way where she's been shown as a 3-dimensional human being who did a lot of phenomenal things and changed the world despite her flaws. That's why I want to tell that story. Why as a musical? It seemed obvious to me. I don't know how there isn't a musical about her already before mine. because it sings. I mean, it's high stakes right from the beginning. From the moment she arrives at court and starts getting involved with Henry, like that is a king you're going after. We're talking about life and death immediately because of the stakes of royalty. That sings to me. And then why? Oh, well, also the framing of the show as well, which did take me a hot sec to find out. But eventually, the framing is because Elizabeth, her daughter, was the Golden Age queen. And that's largely in part to what Anne did. So that's why the framing of the show. And then why now? Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but we've made some progress where gender and rights are concerned in a patriarchal society, but boy, do we have a lot further to go. So this story, I think, adds to that conversation in an interesting way, hopefully. And it seems important to me that we continue to tell the story of great women who did cross gender lines and then were, well, killed for it. I was going to say punished for it, but ultimately with Anne, she was killed. Spoiler alert, just so you know. So for you, you really need to know why the story being told in this way and why now. Even more specifically, why does it need to be told as a musical, okay? What does that add to the story? What does it uplift from the story or enhance? Or what does it insert into the story that the story doesn't already have? Again, for the King's Legacy, that seemed obvious to me. Also, not to mention the fact that there are so many books, TV shows, movies already written about her. It needed something new and fresh. But what does adding music do for your story? Let's say you've got a classic novel that you want to adapt. Everyone knows that novel. It's great. It's wonderful. It's lovely. People praise it for being this wonderful, fantastic thing. But you want to musicalize it. Why? What is the music adding to that story that bringing that onto stage with music live would be a different experience that enhances what the story is? We can chat more about this, Jim. Okay, and then beyond all of this, why does this story need to be told now? What is it about the present moment that says, yes, this story is needed and needed now? I don't mean needed by necessarily the world. That's a little too lofty. I don't think any one musical story is going to solve the entire world, but it may be more along the lines of why this story now in terms of a cultural moment in a very specific location, or in a country, or for a particular set of audience members. Does your story pave the way for people who don't see themselves on stage or their stories on stage? Or does your musical hit on something culturally that resonates really strongly across a certain set of people? Why now? I don't think we would write Oklahoma now. I don't think that resonates anymore. But maybe there's something in that book. I've never read the original novella, but maybe there's something in there that would resonate today, but that would probably change the way the story was being told. Okay. So again, pulling back here, question 2, the multi-parter is, why this story being told in this way now? Great. Go forth, write those things. Okay, question 3, another multi-layered question. This is why I say question sets. It's less about 6 direct questions. Each of these is more of a set. Okay, number 3. What is your personal why for telling the story? Okay, so to go deeper on that, this is why it's multi-part. Why are you telling this story? Why are you the person who needs to be telling the story or feels the need to tell this story? What are you adding or bringing to the table? I know that goes deep. I know that that's a lot of like, I don't know. Why me? Because I said so? Or I don't know. I guess it doesn't have to be me. Someone else could probably do this. Let's take that line of thinking and throw it over there into the corner. Okay. We can doubt ourselves later. This is not about the self-doubt portion. This is not to get you to start wondering, should I be doing this? No, do your thing. Please write your musical. But this is more of, what is it that you as a human being who wants to tell this story, what are you bringing to the table? What is it that made it feel necessary for you to tell the story? Because the same story is going to come out completely differently from two different perspectives, right? So there's something you're bringing to the table here. What is it? To look more introspectively here, what is the story about for you? So perhaps it's aligned with the original story and what the original story was about, what the original idea was about, but maybe it doesn't. Are we putting a new or a different spin on this story? Are you focusing on one aspect of the story or a particular theme that you want to dig into? In your eyes, what is this all about? Why are we doing it? That's an important question. So if I was to go about looking at King's Legacy again, honestly, I didn't know why I was called to this story originally. I had no idea. Figured it out later. Thank you, therapy. But it ultimately has to do with patriarchy and what I've seen patriarchy do, especially in terms of gender across history and today, right? There's a lot about that I could go into. That's more on the personal side. But when I had that realization, I was like, oh, yeah. And things in the show that aren't currently serving this concept, I'm going to have to look at them. Some of them stayed, some of them left. And does it have to do with the original way of telling the story? It does. It does. I mean, Anne Boleyn, again, she crossed gender lines. She did things women weren't supposed to do. She took on her masculine qualities and she owned it in a way that helped her get to where she wanted to be. So was it a part of that? Yes. But they're more like siblings, these two whys. The why of the original idea and the why that was personal, but they're heavily related. And having both of those sets of information is going to be so important to you and your story. So very important. Not to mention, you're going to be bringing something to the table on this. Like, let's say that the writers of Six decided to then write a musical specifically about Anne Boleyn. We already know, we can tell from Six, their version of Anne Boleyn would be extraordinarily different than mine. Even if they decided to write her story in a way that was supposed to be uplifting her in the way of against the patriarchy, their show would be completely and utterly different from mine. I'm bringing something else to the table. I've got experiences that are like story experiences, personal experiences, but also I have music experiences that are different from theirs. Our literal score sounds would be so different. So very different. I bet theirs would be based on Greensleeves. Mine is very much not. So these are things that are important to consider. What are you bringing and how does that interplay with the story you chose to musicalize? Big questions here on a Thursday in June. How are y'all doing today? Am I overwhelming us? Hopefully I'm not overwhelming us. If you have questions, please lay them on me. If you're just joining, hey, we're chatting about the big questions, my North Star questions, 6 question sets to consider for every one of your musical projects so that we can kind of keep track, be guided in what we're trying to do the whole time through writing, editing, and development. Make sure that we are always serving you and your stories. To the best of our ability, at least. Oh, okay. Let's take a quick break on that for a moment. Just to recap here, we've got question 1. What is the story about originally as the idea came to you or the thing that you're adapting from? Number 2, got to ask yourself, why this story being told in this way and why now? And number 3, what is your personal why for telling this story? What are you bringing? What is that connection? Okay. Before we move on to questions 4, 5, and 6, let's chat a little bit about some stuff. By the way, if you're enjoying this, please give it a little like so it can spread to more people like you. I'd appreciate it. I know there are a lot of musical theater writers out there who want this kind of information. I want to make sure that they have access. Clearly, that's a large part of what I do, trying to increase accessibility to musical theater writing knowledge. It's a very strong passion of mine. I think it's important that we have as many people as possible who want to be doing this, having the ability to do it. Also, if you are interested in like going deeper on this stuff in particular, as it relates to you and to your shows, your projects, reach out. I do a lot of coaching, one-on-one coaching, and honestly, summer is a great time for me to do this sort of stuff. I have a lot more time on my schedule, more flexibility. So if this is something that you'd like to take a deep dive on and chat with someone live about and actually sit down, look at your materials, to go through with an objective outside eye, take a look and see, yes, this is you are hitting the marks with all these things that you answered here in our big questions. And here's the spots where I'm not sure we are. I love doing that sort of work. Seriously, helping people write their musicals and develop their musicals is my greatest passion. Well, in addition to writing my own, but I love it so much. My clients have had like some really phenomenal success, whether that's been through one-on-one coaching or the accountability group, or just in our labs. I mean, sometimes there's a writing pair right now who sometimes it's just the two of them who show up to lab because of the time of day that we're doing lab that week. And they just essentially get a private coaching session with me because like, hey, it's just the two of them. They had something to share. And so we just talk about it and deep dive. It's a lot of fun. So join us in the collective, reach out. Let's do some writing, do some coach. And I also offer like all sorts of packages and things. So if your first thought is, oh no, I can't afford that, you probably can. Just come chat with me. Oh, and of course, you can reach out through my website. You can email me here. You can do the DMs on the Instagrams, any of the ways. Feel free to reach out. I'll put a link to my website down below. It'll be great. Okay, let's dive back in. Question 4. Oh, wait, but also stick around if you want to do the Ask Me Anything at the end, because I think this topic will go pretty quick. We'll probably be done in like 15-ish minutes, so there should be plenty of time. Ouch. Okay, question set 4. Who is the target audience? Okay. We have to clarify some stuff on this one. So perhaps you don't have a crystal clear idea yet of who your target audience is. Maybe you're too early in the process, but more of a notion on this instead of a specific type, and that's okay. It's totally okay to have kind of an idea of your audience, especially early on. This will become more specific as you write, and I would like to say this is not a business marketing course. You do not need an avatar. So it does not need to be white men between the ages of 20 and 35 who go to Blink Gym and get Starbucks on the way home and work in finance. I don't know what musical we're writing for them, but like that, we don't have to go that specific. Not at all. This is more of a general thing. So let's break this down with a few like sub questions. Okay, we can ask, number 1, who wants to hear this story? Okay. Versus number 2, who needs to hear this story? Question 3, are they the same, or do the people who need to hear it also likely don't? Wait, yeah. Are the people who need to hear it likely not the people who want to hear it? Because that could be a problem. Potentially, not necessarily. That's more of a marketing thing to solve, honestly. Number 4, who needs to be given access to this story? And how are we going to do it? Right? Which is really question 5 here. How are we going to do it? Does that mean that this needs to go to Broadway, off-Broadway, regional theaters? Is it theater for young audiences? Is this something to be licensed into schools? Is this for community theaters, for amateur theaters? And how does this affect the audience? Right? So again, that's a lot of questions, sub-questions here, but all of it's about like, who is the target? Who are you writing for? Who needs this story? And then who do you think, like that's the core, it's the little guy, the little circle. And then the bigger circle around that is, who do you think wants to hear this story? Because hopefully the needs is in the middle of the wants. If your need and your want don't match, again, chatting with the marketing team would be a good idea, because then you might need to rethink your approach to how you're going to write the show. But the want is more of a like, oh, let's call in people. That's marketing language, right? To make sure that we're not only hitting the need, but we're hitting the want. And then, of course, like everyone always wants to say, I'm writing for everyone. It's like, okay, great, lovely. I'm glad that you want everyone to see your show. That's beautiful and wonderful. However, not everyone's going to connect to the show, and that's fine. But also, you're not writing for everyone. You're writing for a specific set of people with this message that you have, and you want those people to connect. Okay, so just bearing that in mind. Onward. Yeah, and then as far as the idea of access, if you're writing a story that is specifically for, I don't know, let's say for young children, let's say for middle schoolers, maybe that's not a Broadway show. Maybe we shouldn't be aiming for Broadway. Because how many middle schoolers will then actually get the opportunity to see that show if that's where we're headed? However, if instead, in order to get more middle schoolers to see the show, we are thinking in terms of theater for young audience, we're trying to connect with TYA theaters around the country so that more of those groups can produce this show and get it into schools or bring school groups to them. That's how you're going to get your message and your show to the right people. Right, so this does make a difference at like what tier of theater you want to be getting to in order for your show to make the impact you're looking for to the audience you're looking for. Worthy questions. All right, question set number 5. Are we doing okay? Y'all need a break? Y'all good? I assume you're good. Onward. Question 5. What do you want the audience to take away from the experience of watching your show? AKA, what is the main message of your show? What is the thing you want them to walk away with? So this might align, I will just warn you, this might align with one of your answers from the first 3 question sets, but it's also possible that it doesn't. It's also, it's okay either way. Either we're getting more information or we're hooking back around to things that are deep, like the whys. So you can go deeper on the specific question by asking, what's the effect that you are aiming for? So what is the emotional or mental state that you want your target audience to be leaving with? How does this interplay with the message of the show? And it's not just about the target audience. It's your audience on the whole, right? So let's say that you have, I don't know, you have a show that at the end of it, you want people to be contemplating, I don't know, what's a big question? Contemplating whether or not capitalism is moralistic. Your show doesn't provide an answer to that. That's the thought that you want people to be walking away with. Hopefully, it's not just your target audience who's walking away with that question, but it's everyone who saw the show. Will it affect your target audience more? Maybe. It might resonate with them more. That's probably why they're your target audience. But even so, that's a thought that you want them to walk away with. On the emotional side, do you want people to walk away with a feeling of elation, to uplift spirits? Is that a part of your show? And is that connected to your central message? Is the central message of the show that ultimately humans are good? And at the end of the show, you want people to walk away feeling like relieved, excited. What is it? What are these things that, as I walk out of the theater after seeing your show, I should be thinking or feeling? It's important to know. It's also going to help you write your finales, but, you know, think about that when you get there. Finales happen late. Oh, good. Okay, so that's question set 5. We've got one more question set. Number 6. This is actually a legit question. It's just straightforward. What are your show's major 2 to 3 themes? Every show has a lot of themes, but there's usually a major 2, 3, sometimes 4 themes that your show is covering and really focusing on, honing in on, and then there are sub-themes underneath. It's good to know all the main themes and the sub-themes, and in fact, when doing this work, finding out the answer to this question, you may be like, oh, I know all my themes, and then you have a list of a dozen, be like, ooh, which ones are my main themes? And then really beginning to parse that out. But sometimes I've seen people in the writing process be like, yeah, so this is what my show's about. We're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. And then half the script is based on these other little themes over here. Like, wait a second, hold on. You're missing the main messages and your why because we're focused on these themes. Are these themes more important than this stuff? Do these answers need to change? Or are these themes not big enough? Do we need to give them less time, less energy? So there's a lot that the answer to this question will do as far as playing with the answers to all the other question sets. But generally speaking, what are the main themes of your show? Bearing that in mind, you'll be able to know how much real estate things should get. And of course, many, many themes per show. So like, don't focus too hard on it. Don't freak yourselves out at all. I will say though, that question in particular is great for when you need to go back and revise. So for me, with King's Legacy, one of my main themes was uplifting women's stories, especially the stories of incredible women in history, right? That's the main theme of the show. And I don't know, this was big draft 3 or 4. I went back, I was reading, I was like, we're mentioning these people and their accomplishments, but we're not uplifting. There was nothing in there that was like, here's this gift unto the world of who these people are and what they've done and their impact and through a personal, shown in a personal way through specific characters and their relationships. It was just like facts on paper. I was like, I failed. Yeah, but it was good to keep in mind. Like that was a major theme that I really wanted to be inherent to the show. Changed the way that I wrote the next couple of drafts, and now it's infused everywhere, which is great. So it's good. Reviewing. All right, let's talk about all these questions one more time. Here we go. Question 1. What is the story about originally? Question 2, the multi-parter. Ask yourself, why this story being told in this way, aka musical, with your framing and stakes, and why now? Okay. Question 3, another multi-layered. What is your personal why for telling the story? Why does it need to be you? Why do you feel the need to tell it? What do you bring to the table? Question 4, who is the target audience for this story? Don't forget to ask yourself who needs to hear it and who will want to hear it. Figure out what that looks like on paper. Do they relate? Do they not relate? How do we then get the story to those people? Question 5, what do you want the audience to take away from your show? From the experience of watching your show? And that's beyond just the target audience. It's your audience. Anyone who bought a ticket is in there. Oh, hey, Purple Pop. Oh, you are not late. Not late at all. Also, is it Friday where you are? Because it's Thursday here. Wish it were Friday. And then question 6, what are your show's 2 or 3 major themes? So these are important questions to consider all the way down, have answers to. The answers may change as you write, but at least you will be changing the answers because of the way your show is developing and not just kind of willy-nilly to tweak. But having these answered and then available easily to you and your writing team, your creative team, is going to be so helpful for the process of writing, developing, and revising your pieces. So if anyone has questions on any of that, please do indeed let me know. But in the meantime, we're going to move into our, oh, I've got a question here. Do you have any advice for, we Yeah, I know. I screwed you up, Purple Pop. My bad. We are moving into Ask Me Anything time, so please feel free to ask me anything. But I see Grant. Hi, Grant. Do you have any advice for folks writing in genres/styles that lie outside of stereotypical jazz hands mega musicals, or the tired contemporary tropes we've been seeing for the past decade or so? Ooh, do I have advice for you? Yeah. Write your story. Write your thing. Whatever that looks like, whatever that sounds like. Yeah, you can look at the history of Broadway in particular, but musical theater and see trends for certain pop sounds. I don't mean pop in the way we think of pop now, but like what was the popular music of the time, and the trends of those sounds can really be heard throughout all of musical theater. But if you really like dive in and look deep at the canon, what was being produced, large scale, small scale, you'll see there's always been a variety. Like it's never just been one thing. And that goes all the way back to pre-musical theater roots, when we're kind of coming out of operetta and vaudeville and the Follies, all those fun show types that kind of evolved, I guess, coalesced into what musical theater became. So like, I think just write your thing. Tell your story the way you want to tell it. I mean, musical theater is flexible, far more flexible than I think we give it credit for. Stephen Sondheim had a humongous impact on musical theater, but like he wrote in a lot of different ways in different genres. Not all of his stuff sounded the same. He just kind of told the story he was telling. Does it all sound like Sondheim? Yes. All sound like musical theater? No, not necessarily. Does that help? Is that useful? I also love your jazz hands mega musical phraseology. That's a funny way to put it. Yeah, I mean, also not for nothing. If we look at the Tony Award winners of the past couple of decades, like a lot of them are not the jazz hands mega musical sort of chips. That seems to have been more of a late 70s, 80s, 90s sort of thing. Not that we haven't gotten some here and there, but I'm thinking about like the Band's Visit. That's not a mega musical. Fun Home. The Light in the Piazza. Did that win? I don't know if that won. I think it won for score. That there are a lot of different ways to tell a story. That's my thought. Yeah. Purple Pop. Any underutilized techniques in musicals that you would like to see more of in the future? Yes, but that's my personal tastes. It would be very prescriptive if I went just based on my personal taste. But since you asked, things I'd like to see more of. I'm a huge fan of using motif smartly. And by smartly, I just mean like with intention. I think a lot of shows accidentally fall into having some motifs, but because they feel accidental, they don't feel on purpose. We don't really get an interplay of motif that is important to character or to story moments or to certain locations in the show. But I think that's what makes the music side rich in a lot of the old shows. And I don't mean that you have to write in an old style to do it. Old style. Write whatever forms you want, write whatever genre you want, but the more motif that you can add in, and that goes for word motif too. Like people use a certain set of language. Like if you look at my stuff written out, you can still tell that it's me talking, right? I have a certain way of speaking, certain speech patterns, certain vocabulary. So how are we utilizing motif? And this also goes to like production team too, like designers. What kind of motifs are you digging into? And how do they interplay with the writing or with the other designers or with whatever the director is doing as the main vision for the show, right? I just find it so interesting when we can truly step into a world in musical theater, no matter the size of the theater or the audience. I just think that envelopment is part of what we're looking for when we go see a story live. We want to be pulled into a world. We want to escape, or else we could just sit at home on our couch in our PJs and watch a movie. Nothing wrong with that. I love doing that too. But if I want to be immersed, I go to the theater. That was a long answer. Sorry about that. But I appreciate that question. You also asked, I know that's vague in terms of music, characters, story. Oh, okay, great. So that was my music answer. Characters, story beats. Yeah, okay, so I feel like we're getting a lot of the same story over and over again right now in musical theater, especially the past 20-ish years. There's been a lot of shows that feel like they're the same, or at least structured the same. A lot of things that are very classic 3-act, 5-act, linear structure, hero's journey, without anything else attached. There's not as much, because like you can start with that, but like zhuzh it, play with it, add other elements. Like, is there elements of circular storytelling that can go in there, or concept musicals, or how can a framing device really take this and screw with it? I don't know. There's a lot of ideas that I think could be incorporated more in terms of story, so that I don't know. I find that a lot of people who are not in the industry but who love theater, I hear them being like, "Oh yeah, I mean, is it good? Or is it just like a typical musical?" I'm like, we shouldn't have a typical musical anymore, right? We have so much variety available to us. I mean, if we look at that like kind of neo-golden age that we had before the pandemic hit, when all 41 theaters were full all the time for years, like there was a lot more variety in what was happening on Broadway. I thought that was really exciting because we got different kinds of storytelling. And I don't know, I'm also interested in like, what are non-patriarchy centered musicals about? What are non-white musicals about? We're getting some of these things, but like, I want more. Give us the stories. So that's my extra answer on that. Piano Eagle, roughly how much dialogue should there be between songs? As much as you need. Unfortunately, that is the answer. I know that's super vague, but I think it depends on your show. Some shows are sung through, so like there's not much dialogue at all, unless you count recitatives dialogue, which technically it is, I guess. I don't know. I think more than anything, that's about the flow, right? Not just about the time flow of the show, but the emotional flow. Like if we just had a long sequence of music, maybe our ears need a break. It's entirely possible that we're like, ooh, pause. No. Or maybe we're having a grand old time emotionally and it's musical comedy and it's just like this great little nugget of a song, some funny dialogue, and then another song pretty soon because we're not tired of it, or we want more, or we want the story to progress. It depends on what your songs are doing, what your styles are. Yeah, it's so individual. I'm glad you asked that question though, because I get that question a lot in my coaching. Sorry, my nose is so bothered by the smoke. I apologize. I'm sure that looks great on camera. It's a question I get a lot during coaching though, is how much dialogue should I have? I'm like, well, I don't know. Have you plotted out your show? I always try to get people to think about an emotional plot for their show, because not every story is linear, but there will be ups and downs emotionally for both the audience and for all the characters individually on stage. I think that really helps give an idea of like, okay, emotionally, this is a low for the audience, and it isn't necessarily for a character on stage. Can I use that character to bring the audience energy back up? I don't know. It's a lot of considerations like that, but it's a really great question. Grants. Exactly. Okay. Thank you so much. I've always been so adamant about the fact that musical theater is a medium vehicle for storytelling as opposed to a genre. Yes. Absolutely, like a massively different Hadestown. Yes, I agree. I love Hadestown. I think it is different. I do have some friends who are like, we've seen it before. I'm like, I guess to an extent, but I love it. As an aspiring writer composer in college, I've yet to have anyone really sit me down and walk me through any surefire ways to enter the industry as a composer. Surefire? Oh no, there's no such thing as surefire in musical theater. That's wow, that feels very sad coming out of my mouth, but it's true. Yikes. No, there's no surefire ways. Here, I'll give you my reductive answer first. My reductive answer is if you're composing for musical theater, you did it. Congrats. What are you going to do with the thing now, right? You wrote something. How are we going to get it out there? Or how are we going to develop it, right? My more complex answer, which really is still pretty reductive as well, is it's all about the people. It's all about connections. So you may not know a lot of people right now because you're in college and you're on the younger side, but your network is going to grow and it's going to grow fast. And the more things you do, whether that's something that you're putting on, you're presenting or producing, or if you're helping someone else out with their stuff, or coming on as a pianist, or you're doing an arrangement for someone, or you're offering services to like write out sheet music, to engrave. However you want to get involved artistically in this industry with other people, your network is going to grow. And that's the thing. Like, you're in, you did it, you've arrived. Yeah, I mean, that is entering the industry. I think about how, for me, it did not feel like I was entering the industry, and it was like one of those moments where eventually I was like, oh, there's no arrival point. You just do things. And then at some point you realize, oh, I'm here and I'm doing things. And when I got to the city in 2011, I was bartending at Broadway houses. My home theater was the New Amsterdam, where Mary Poppins was. But a lot of the people I met were through bartending. But a lot of them were connections that I either utilized at the time, and those people have left the industry or left the city, or like I'm still friends with some of those people, which is great. And they're still in the industry. And so that was a part of breaking in or entering the industry in some way. It didn't really hit me until maybe 2016. Yeah, maybe 5 years into living here, that all the things I had done between teaching, coaching, bartending, playing piano for people, musical directing, doing the BMI workshop, helping people out as a singer, like literally helping friends out as a singer, the performing I've done, that all these things had created such a gigantic network for me of people. And I don't mean network as like networking. I mean, just the people I knew. And I was like, oh, I'm very much a part of this industry, just in my own unique individual way. And that's really how it is for most people, because let's not forget that people we think of as like breaking in or breaking through to the top, the Broadway, the small circle, that it is a small circle. The majority of people in the industry are not the people doing Broadway. The majority of people do not have Broadway credits. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. Oh, you're welcome. That was a lovely question. I'll stay on for another couple of minutes if anyone else has any other questions in here. But while you potentially type those out, I'm going to just offer one other thing from me, from my own experiences to all of you, which is that however you're doing it, you're doing it right. And this is something that my coaches say, my creativity coaches, Susan Blackwell and Laura Camion of the Spark File. If you don't listen to the Spark File podcast, you should. It's really phenomenal, and their coaching is chef's kiss. So good. But however you are going about doing your thing, as long as you are staying true to yourself as a human being and as an artist, you're doing it right. And there's a lot of expectations that we are handed or that media hands us as to like, this is the path to success, doing this thing. There's way more flexibility than that. I don't know a single person who has truly followed that one path. I know a couple of people who walked it for a while, but like they still ended up zigzagging and doing something else or growing in a different way than expected. Like I have some friends who've been on Broadway who aren't doing theater anymore. I also know some people who are doing theater, but they're doing it differently, or they decided to start their own businesses and teach or coach, or people who've integrated in all of the skills, all the different hats that they wear into one like major thing that they're doing with their lives. I don't know. There are just so many ways to do it. And I think we shouldn't box ourselves in if possible. I don't think there's a need to. I don't think we got it. However you're doing it, you're nailing it. Good work. And keep like working on it. Work your craft. Learn more about what you're doing while still doing it. Don't feel the need to like sit and learn first. Nah, learn as you go. Because the best way to learn is by doing, and then also like take courses, meet people, watch Musical Theater Writer Guy's YouTube channel. Hey, I plugged for myself. Any way that you are gaining information while doing the thing, that's going to be your best way for growth, for meeting new people, for moving forward. Another big point of topic in my friend is location. Yes. But in my experiences, is New York the end all be all? No way. No way, Jose. Definitely used to be. I'd even say as a writer, it still kind of was up until pandemic started. But the pandemic really opened the world for this industry a lot. You can do this without living in New York. You can do any facet of this without living in New York. Is it easier living here? Yeah, I do think so. I do think there's more opportunity here than other places, especially when we're talking about things that have to be done in person, like the BMI workshop. As a writer, now that we are through the pandemic, BMI is back in person. So if you get accepted to that program, you have to live here. So in a way, being in New York makes it easier, but it's part of why I offer something different. I offer something that is online, mostly online, though it's technically hybrid, but you don't have to live here for it. To get your work produced here, you do not have to live here. To make connections across this country, across the world, honestly, you do not have to live here. For specific gigs, you may have to temporarily be in a place, but no, I don't think that it's a necessity anymore, which is nice. Like, if I choose to leave New York, I don't know that I'll choose to leave New York. I love New York. But if I choose to leave New York, I would feel comfortable doing so, like career-wise, because I would probably go somewhere where I still have access, and pretty much anywhere has access if you can afford a plane ticket. And I have a lot of connections who still are here, so I'd feel comfortable coming back. But also a lot of my connections don't live here. So I'd feel comfortable doing theater elsewhere for a short time. I don't know. No, I don't think it's a necessity. It's a good question. Trying to figure out where it'd be best for me to live. Yeah, I mean, as far as networking goes, I don't know that there's a huge advantage to being in New York anymore. I say that. How do I feel about that? The best networking I've ever done was doing the BMI workshop, because that was 40 people in a room. So you got to know those people. I don't think I've had another experience that's been quite like that, other than doing theater. When either my shows have been done or I've, as a performer, gone and done shows, that's the best networking that there is. But a lot of that wasn't in New York. So I made connections who were from lots of places, including New York City. Yeah, I do things. That's the best way to make connections. If you feel the need or the pull to be in a big city to start, do it. But not a necessity. Hopefully that answers your question. All right, friends, it is a couple minutes before noon, so I'm just going to quickly remind you that those North Star questions that we talked about today are so crucial. Bear those in mind as best you can, and if you need help digging through it for your material, you know where to find me. I'm very, very happy to help out. So I thank you all for being here with me today. You guys asked wonderful questions. I appreciate your time and your energy and all the creativity you're putting out into the world. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will see you again in video form next week and live again in 4 weeks. So have a great month of June, everyone. Feel free to reach out anytime. I'm still available, and I'll talk to y'all soon. All right. Bye, everybody. Bye.